Welcome to the meeting this morning. A couple of things, a bit of information for you. The meeting has been live streamed and recorded. A video recording will be posted online shortly after the meeting on the Council YouTube channel. If the meeting goes on long enough, I'll introduce breaks where appropriate. If you wish to speak, if you're remote, raise your hand on the screen. And if you're in the meeting, obviously just raise your own hand. Okay. Okay, right, we'll go to the SEDA. Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. And we have apologies from Provost Bissett, Deputy Provost Balfour. Councillor Aitchison.
Here.
Councillor Anslow.
Here.
Deputy Provost, we're just pausing for a moment just to adjust the volume of the remote attenders. Councillor Anslow, I wonder if you could just indicate again.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Binney.
Present.
Councillor Bowes.
Present.
With apologies from Councillor Brown. Councillor Buchanan.
Present.
Councillor Bundy.
Apologies.
Councillor Colley.
Present.
Councillor Deacon.
Present.
Councillor Devine.
Present.
Councillor Flynn.
Present.
Councillor Forrest.
Present.
Councillor Garner.
Present.
Councillor Hannah.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Kerr.
Yep.
Councillor McCabe. Councillor Meiklejohn.
Present.
Councillor Murtagh.
And Shaw.
Councillor Nimmo.
Present.
Councillor Patterson.
Present.
Councillor Patrick.
Present.
Councillor Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Robertson.
Present.
With apologies from Councillor Sinclair. Councillor Spears.
Present.
And Councillor Steinbein.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Yeah. Financial or not interest they have in business, identifying the relevant agenda and nature of interest. Do we have any declarations? Okay, thank you. Now on to item 3 is the minutes and information bill. That's pages 3 to 12.
Deputy Provost.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question, please, sir, before we go on to the agenda proper? 3 weeks ago was one of the most momentous times in modern history, with the Platinum Jubilee of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. I'd just like to know, and I've been asked by many constituents, why this council didn't organise and support any major events to highlight this wonderful moment in our history. Thank you. Maybe it's unfair to ask you, Deputy Provost, obviously because of the appointments have just been recently made, but maybe some of the council officials would be able to tell us why nothing was done.
Yeah. The Chief Executive would have some information on that.
Yes, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Deputy Provost. So we, in line with all other councils, were approached by the Department for Levelling Up Local Government and Housing, asking us to support communities in any proposals that they might wish to bring forward for the Jubilee. There were a number of such approaches. I don't have the information directly in front of me, but I can certainly send something out to elected members. There were a number of community events, a small number in Falkirk, it has to be said, and we sought to support these where we were asked for such support. So I can certainly send out the detail of that. In terms of a council organised event, there would indeed have been the opportunity to do that if the council had wished to do so. I know that some councils did that and some councils did not. Certainly, I don't think at any stage was it suggested to me that that's something that we would wish to do. So other than supporting events in the community, which was the primary ask of us and the primary ask from the UK government in that regard, we didn't do anything beyond that, but I'm happy to share the details of the support and the offer that was made.
Thank you.
Spears.
Thank you. Maybe we should take the opportunity today to congratulate Her Majesty on 70 years of service in our Platinum Jubilee. I'd also like to thank this and Veterans Week, not just our armed forces and our veterans, but our reservists. I know I do on my councillor page, but it may be an opportunity for the council to thank them for their service, this being Armed Forces Week.
The minute on the 30th of March, just the
Deputy Provost, are we talking about the, we're on to the item 3 then, the statutory meeting minutes, 25th of May.
Deputy Provost, just to clarify, we're still on item 3A, which is the minutes of the meeting of 30th of March, which was the final meeting of the last council. So the minutes are before the council just for approval in the first instance.
Deputy Provost, happy to agree.
Okay. Any other questions or anything on the minutes? No. Okay, move on. Minute of statutory meeting. 25th of May, that's page 38.
Yep. A couple of thank you, Deputy Provost. And first of all, an opportunity to congratulate you on your position as well as the Provost. But in relation to the statutory meeting FC12 remunerations, could I say that obviously myself and obviously I think probably the other independent members, we never had an opportunity for any discussions or opportunity to really delve into and have an insight into what the proposal was. We were handed a sheet at the meeting where it was said that there was going to be all different changes, there was going to be levels. And the fact is that I don't feel, and speaking to some of my constituents out there as well, we don't feel that we had an opportunity to have a fair discussion on the changes and this levelling. The fact of the matter is that this issue about senior councillors and portfolio, and obviously the leader of the council has said at the time that this wasn't about finance and about money, which is right. But at the same time, as the fact is that if somebody's just come into the council and they're now being classified as senior councillors, then you've got to look at the likes of Councillor Spears and myself, who are over 30 years service now. And the fact of the matter is that I would like, if possible, if the leader of the council could maybe give a report at maybe one of the next meetings where she would identify how they came across with the justification for the fact is that they had portfolio holders and classified them as senior councillors. So I would like to ask Councillor Meiklejohn, the leader, if she would be prepared to give a report to one of the next meetings of the Falkirk Council and let everybody know how she came to these conclusions. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you, Deputy Provost, and thank you to Councillor Buchanan for the question. I would refer him back to what he said about his long service and indeed Councillor Spear's long service, and you will certainly know how administrations and councils have worked previously, and the way the senior councillor positions have been allocated. I am confident that certainly from my portfolio holders, every one of them are there in a justified position based on their knowledge, skills and experience. And I'm confident that I have a strong political team in that respect. What I would say is that the first time ever in the council, certainly in my time, and I'm sure that others would concur with that who have been here longer, there has been the opportunity to share the political and the civic posts across the council rather than retain it all within a political administration, and that's what we've sought to do. I would say I was disappointed that none of the independents came chapping on my door to speak to me during this process, because my door was always open. I was more than happy to talk about some of the proposals that came forward. I have to say that it's up to council who appoints in that respect, particularly around the remunerations, and there was a fair and democratic vote took place within this council on those particular posts. So I have no difficulty with the governance of that. I think we are restricted in the pot of funding that we have and the number of posts that can be remunerated, but those that are responsible for the high levels of workload and taking the political lead are the ones that are being remunerated the most, and that quite rightly, and that is reflected across every council in this country, across Scotland. If Councillor Buchanan wants a further report, I'm happy to provide a statement in that respect, but we've operated no differently than we have in the past. In fact, I think that we have openly operated across the piece, and it would be up to members, should they wish to come and speak to me, to come and do so.
Through your good self, Deputy Provost, I would just come back on that. First of all, I can't understand what the leader's saying when she's talking about experience and so forth. I've already stated that we realise that there's some councillors that I don't know the background. And as for coming to chap your door, we never got an opportunity in terms until we seen that sheet of paper that was handed out at that meeting. I would like, on behalf of my constituents, a sort of report back that justifies exactly what you've been saying this morning and justifies what you put in that paper, because I think there is genuine concern about this issue. Thank you very much.
Right, we'll move on. Thank you. Okay, thanks for that. There's been an answer from the council leader there. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I would like to concur with Councillor Buchanan and remind the leader that an open door policy is usually operated by all groups. I know we certainly had no approaches from the present minority administration, just to rectify and correct that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Everybody happy to approve? Okay, thank you. Move on now to item 4, roll and action log. That's pages 39 to 44. Oh, sorry. The information bulletin, sorry. Okay, any questions on the information bulletin? Yeah. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Provost, Deputy Provost. Very interesting, and it's more of a comment than a question, although it is partly a question. I mean, I am concerned about the procurement strategy that we have, and I've been looking into it and speaking to officers about it and addressing some of the issues. There's less than a third of our contracts go to, our procurement goes to Falkirk area businesses. Now I recognise, because I have been looking into it, that there has been progress over the last few years, and that has been improving over the last few years. But I think we really should make another big push to try and ensure that we do as much as possible towards community wealth building. And I see that the procurement policy is up for renewal. It at the moment only takes us into 2023. So I'm assuming that at the tail end of this year, when we come back from recess, the work will be beginning to be done on updating the procurement policy for the future. And I think it's important that councillors have an opportunity to try and bring in some ideas about the ways in which we can build community wealth through our procurement policy. I think there are other ways we need to do it as well, but the procurement policy would be a good first start.
Okay, thanks for that.
Deputy Provost.
Councillor Meikle-John.
Just could I make a suggestion on that it might be helpful to all members, particularly new members, to have a briefing around the procurement process, just to allow a bit better understanding, and that will help inform any changes that we make going forward to our procurement programme, and how we do that. I think that might be helpful, just allowing people to understand what happens at the moment.
Okay, thanks for that. Mr. Moody.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Provost, and I'm happy to agree to the suggestion made by the Leader of the Council that there is a briefing arranged for members. I think we need to be conscious that there are 50 new members of the Council. The procurement process is new to all of those new members, and I think it would be helpful to have that briefing. I think that's a good starting point to drawing members' views into the renewal of the procurement strategy. Councillor Hannah is correct that the current strategy ends next year in 2023. But on the issue of procurement to and awarding contracts to local businesses, I wonder if Karen may have some comments that she may wish to make in relation to that point.
Happy to come in, Deputy Provost, if you're okay with that. I think it is worth saying that officers are well aware of members' views and support those about encouraging local businesses and suppliers to participate in our contracts, and that has to be done within the context of all of the procurement rules. But I think it's also fair to say that there's a lot of work that we do to try and do this. There are fewer procurement rules for the contracts that are under £50,000 for goods and services, and you'll know that we use the quick quote system to be able to procure those types of goods and services. For those arrangements, we look for 3 bids as a minimum, and we would always look for one of those bids to be a local supplier. Now, that's very much dependent, though, on there being a local supplier registered on our quick quotes system for us to be able to invite to bid for a contract. You'll also see in the bulletin that there's quite a few contracts in place where they're part of a framework agreement, and these arrangements are generally for contracts of £50,000 or more. These are developed in a way that it lets a number of councils and public sector bodies participate in the framework arrangements through a single contract, and they can sometimes lead to us being able to reduce the costs of procurement, but it does mean in some occasions that our providers would be further afield. We also know that there are some businesses, particularly small businesses, that don't always find it easy to navigate through either the quick quote system or submit bids for these wider contracts. So there are steps that we take to try and support and help local businesses as part of our procurement activities and, as I say, within the procurement rules. Some of the examples of work, and I think it might be helpful just to provide council with some of those examples, are work that we do with local businesses to raise awareness of the procurement arrangements, and also some help how to navigate through these different types of systems so that they feel more able to actually submit bids. And that would mean then that if they are more confident in doing that, they can not only bid for Falkirk area work, but they may be able to then bid for work that covers other areas and councils and public sector bodies too. We also run monthly procurement clinics with SMEs and the third sector, and our local business gateway offer information and training as well. We participate in different events to let potential providers meet, potential suppliers meet us and have discussions with us. And we're also looking at some specific procurement clinics along with police services colleagues for our construction related businesses. The other thing that we offer is some feedback to businesses where they're not successful in securing a contract that they've maybe bid for, and that just gives them some information that may help them in the future if they're submitting a further bid. We always know there's more we can do. We do need to work within the procurement rules, but we always look to see how we can provide support to suppliers in terms of taking that forward. But I do hope that provides committee with the assurance that we do take active steps to encourage local businesses and support them in terms of the process, which, as I say, can sometimes be a little bit complicated. But happy to take any questions, and we do have some colleagues on the call who may be able to help with us too if there are questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Cam. Any questions on that?
Not so much a question again. I had off my own bat managed to get a bit of briefing for myself about the procurement process, which is why I'm able to feel confident enough to talk about it a bit. And I do recognise that there's a lot been going on, and I commend the officers for the work that they have been doing in this regard. All I'm saying is that yes, we need more training on this, we need to understand the process, but I think we as councillors also need to have an input into the development of the procurement policy to enable us to drive it in the right direction. I'm very well aware of the statutory position, very well aware of the issues and the difficulties there may be, but I think perhaps if a number of extra people get their brains round the same table, we might be able to come up with ideas about better ways of doing things and improving. And if councillors are engaged, we can also maybe help to reach out to more of the local businesses, because some councillors will have contacts with local businesses and will be able to reach out and encourage them to get engaged, encourage them to engage with our officers.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Kerr.
I'll be quick, Deputy Provost. As elected members who have been on the last 5 years, I've shouted about this for 5 years and understand exactly where Councillor Hannah's coming from, but when you delve into a lot of the companies, we've got juicings for Coventry, where everything doesn't come from Coventry. It's local business, and it's local people who work in the business. We've got another one where Bernardo's, Edinburgh. It's in Tamford Hill. So there's maybe their head offices are maybe in England, Ireland and other places, but they've got branches that are local, that employ local people, that help our economy. I'm not trying to tell people how to suck eggs, but just that's what I found out in the last 5 years. Thanks, Deputy Provost.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions? Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I have a couple of specific questions regarding contracts, and it follows on with Councillor Hannah and Councillor Kerr's points that they've already made, where perhaps we as elected members don't have sufficient information. If we can turn to page 12, specifically, it's provision of IT network equipment, a value of £175,000. It starts in 22 and ends in 25. It seems excessive. Why a 3-year contract until March 2025? That follows on, or if we turn to page 14, you'll see that the soft strip of the council chambers, the municipal buildings, ends on the 30th of November 2022. It has a value of £650,000. Why do we need the 2-year extension following the strip out of the municipal building?
Okay, thanks for that. Karen, could you give some information on that, please?
Yes, happy to, Deputy Provost. I can certainly pick up the point about the page 12 network provision, and possibly my colleague Malcolm can pick up the other question that Councillor raised. The network provision is actually about moving our IT lines that connect all of our systems from the municipal buildings onto the cloud. So that will give us a much faster speed in terms of connecting all of our systems that we use on a daily basis. The contract, however, goes beyond that and actually looks at 96 different sites and how we connect for those different sites. And we're moving them onto the cloud as well, trying to make sure that we've got a consistent and better approach right across the council's properties. What I would say is that having looked at the information provided in the bulletin, I think it could well have been clearer. So I appreciate the question being asked because it could have been clearer, and we'll take that on board for information that we provide in future bulletins on these types of matters. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Second question, Mr. Benny, could you maybe offer some advice?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I'm afraid I don't have that information at today's meeting. Could I, with your indulgence, go and find the answer and come back and update councillors thereafter?
That's fine, thanks.
First of all, Deputy Provost, thanks to Karen for that. I think she has, and she's provided me personally with sufficient information there. And the fact that she recognised that perhaps the amount of information within the bulletin here wasn't quite as clear as it could have been, so I fully accept that. Thank you for that. And the second question I have is regarding if you just excuse me, my computer is just here we are. The daft one. Page 21. A contract value of £4,300,000 for the supply of frozen food. It's an awful lot of frozen food. Can I ask what that's for?
Okay, Mr. Naylor.
Thank you, Provost. That is essentially for the provision of frozen food over a 4-year period for school dinners. It's a contract into which there's been a 5% uplift built in terms of expected increases in cost. It covers the extension of free school meals to primary 4 and 5. So as of August, we will have free school meals for primary 1 to 5 inclusive, and this covers a 4-year period.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thanks to Mr. Naylor. I'm just delighted to hear that he's not supplying Nando's with it. But that's fine. I mean, again, it just comes back to just a wee line in the bulletin would have been sufficient for that. Thank you, Deputy Provost. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Spears.
It's point of information. Have we changed the title of Deputy Provost to Deputy Provost, as is still the recognised Deputy Provost? Because there seems to be a great deal of confusion regarding this.
We'll move on. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Deputy or Deputy Provost.
Sorry, I was asking for an answer to your question.
It was more like a statement, I think. We'll move on. Councillor Hannah.
So it was a point of information.
We're moving on. I'm not going to say it again. Councillor Hannah.
Looking at page 13 of the information bulletin, there's over £1 million contract for the replacement of kitchen units in council housing properties. Now, I'm aware, because of concerns from local constituents, that there's been a huge delay, and I have been in discussion with some of the officers about why this is, and there does seem to be a major delay in the actual installation, which is being put down to COVID. I'm concerned about the fact that there is a delay and it's not very clear what's being done to speed it up, because people have been waiting a long time for their kitchens. And I'm also concerned to know that we have that those who were negotiating the contract have managed to have some benefit to the council in terms of contract compliance, which clearly hasn't occurred.
Okay, thanks for that. Karen?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Provost. I'm happy to arrange to speak to Councillor Hannah with this meeting and have a discussion on just that particular contract and how we're progressing with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Happy to do that.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? No. Happy to approve that? Okay. We'll move on, or move back, sorry, to the volume of minutes. Any questions on that? No, happy to approve?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Right, we'll move on then to rolling action log, item 4, pages 39 to 44. That'll be Mr. Moody.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Provost. This is the point in the agenda where the Council has an opportunity just to note the progress with reports that it has called for in the past, and there will be comments provided if the report isn't able to be provided in the original timescale anticipated. So it is an opportunity for members of the Council to ask questions on the items on the rolling action log. There is no decision to be taken on it, it's simply for noting, but it is available for questions.
Thank you. Any? Right, Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, thanks very much, Deputy Provost. Just a couple of points. The first one's in relation to item 558. That's the strategic property review. I note in the comments column that we're to expect a report after the summer. I'm just wondering if we could tie this down to a particular meeting.
Okay, Malcolm.
Thank you. I'm aiming to bring a report to the executive meeting in early October.
Okay, thanks for that, Malcolm. My second point relates to item 591. Now, this was a motion on adaptations to housing. There was supposed to be a report coming to council this month. Obviously, it's not materialised. I note as well that the Scottish Government have a planned programme of work which is going to mean a review takes place. I'm just wondering again, could we get some sort of timescales tagged onto this so we have a timeline?
Hello, Suzanne Thompson. Can you maybe give some advice on that, please?
Yes, thank you. I've also got a colleague, Gordon McKenzie, here today, who's a locality manager, to address any sort of questions you would have. So there is some national work being done around the equipment and adaptations national guidance, and the consultation document was issued fairly recently, and it recently closed on the 6th of June. So we've been doing some, we did provide a response to that consultation, but it has quite extensive implications across a range of areas of work, sort of including equipment adaptations, assessment practices, pathways, sensory impairment equipment, children's needs development and communication. So it's quite an extensive consultation and the guidance. We've been in touch with the Scottish Government around some indications of when they're likely to review the guidance and reissue that as national guidance, but we feel it's quite prudent just now to continue to do some of the work streams that will support that piece of work, pending the sort of issue of the national guidance, and synchronise that work as a sort of more effective use of time. I hope that's addressed the comments. If there's any further questions, happy to try and answer those.
I'm happy with the comments, Deputy Provost. It's just that in the notes that we've been given, there was supposed to be a report coming to us this month at some point, so that we could inform a decision to the IJB.
I think in terms of the work, I think we've put perhaps in terms of the service priorities understood an update, a verbal update could have sufficed. So apologies if that's been the case. We would intend to take sort of updates, like you say, through the Integration Joint Board, and we have done an update through the Chief Officer's report that we presented to the committee, to our board, sorry, in June, and that was just acknowledging the sort of timescales in relation to the consultation document and that piece of work. Obviously, in terms of our synchronising timescales with the IJB and Council, I think that's why we'd anticipated probably December was a more realistic time frame for that to happen.
Okay, thanks for that, Suzanne. Thanks, Deputy Provost.
Okay, thanks. I'll just bring in Councillor Polly as well for some additional information.
Yes, and actually I was going to ask similar questions. I think taking back to the original meeting when we discussed this, I think Council was very well aware of the significant pressures that the Health and Social Care Partnership were under. Hence, there was a possibility of some information in June rather than the full report. So I'm not sure where we got a full report of the review within the action log, but there was significant challenges, and I think I certainly would want to recognise that the huge pressures that the partnership continues to be under. I think we talk about living with COVID, but that means a really strong challenges in providing health and social care, and I think that the priorities in terms of officers, and I welcome the fact that the partnership officers have managed to respond to the consultation and done some review work, and I look forward to receiving more details in December, and I think we'll get something that is more comprehensive, and I think very much will link in with what the Scottish Government is doing in relation to its guidance. So I think just wanted to acknowledge that when we discussed it, we were very well aware of the huge challenges that the partnership were facing.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions? Oh, okay. Councillor Devine.
Hi, thank you, Deputy Provost. I just wanted to ask an update about where the equal pay is. It says here that it's in progress, so just want a wee bit of update on that, please. Thanks.
Okay. Karen, could you provide some info on that, please?
Yes, happy to, Deputy Provost. We have had quite a number of equal pay claims within Falkirk Council. So we have settled around 1,600, well, over 1,600 claims, and these are all now settled. At the moment, we have 2 claims which are outstanding. Of these 2, one of those claims isn't due to receive any settlement money, but we still need to agree that that's the position with the individual, and it's still to be withdrawn from tribunal. And the other settlement has been sent to the claimant, and we are simply waiting on a response. So there is only 2 that are outstanding at this point in time. We say in the rolling action log that once those are all settled, we'll bring an update to Council, so we would provide a summary to Council at that stage on the actions that were taken, etc., to get us to that stage. I hope that helps. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Hannah.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, any other questions? Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I've got a couple of questions. Strategic Property Review, page 42. There was a report originally promised on the 18th of May 21. It's now due for delivery. We've just heard in October 22. An update was provided to the executive on the 18th of January this year. Can I ask what it contained? Do we have a draft of the proposals contained within the SPR?
Okay, thanks. Mr. Benny.
Thank you. I don't have a draft report ready to share with elected members, and that's why we're targeting the executive meeting in early October for that. I can't speak to activity before my time, but it was my recollection that a report did come to either council or executive last May. So I can't comment further, but just to reassure elected members that the report will, we are targeting that report for early October.
Thanks to Mr. Benny for that, but I do see that there was an update was provided to the executive on the 18th of January. I'm just looking for the other elected members to have an idea of what it actually contains. We'll move on to...
Sorry, Deputy Fuller, can I say that was a verbal update from my memory at Council that was given, and it was a recognition that Mr. Benny was just in post at that point and he was seeking some time to review the strategic property review and to bring back a report. But obviously there's been a number of significant changes since then in the decisions that members have taken, and that has to be factored in. But that was my understanding of what the report was in January.
Okay, thanks for that. There'll be information in due course then. Anything else, Councillor McCabe?
Yes, Deputy Provost, moving on to page 43, originally timetabled for December 21, now due for October 22 delivery. It's to do with the Council HQ and Arts Centre. I note this makes no reference to a theatre provision. Is that facility being dropped?
Mr. Benny.
Thank you. There's no, right now Council has instructed me to bring a report back to review the existing municipal building site and to review the arrangements that could help to make the Falkirk Town Hall more energy efficient, and I'm doing everything I can to get a report on those matters to the council meeting in September of this year.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks to Mr. Benny. I do appreciate he's new in post, and but like myself, he does need to catch up with things that have happened previously. The question I asked was, has the theatre facility been dropped? I didn't receive a response, an answer to that. I'll look out for someone coming back to me to tell me whether the theatre facility has in actual fact been dropped.
Just for clarity, the Arts Centre does refer to the replacement town hall.
So it's Central HQ and Arts Centre and Theatre Town Hall, stroke Town Hall.
The Arts Centre would be, what would be the replacement town hall?
The Arts Centre is the replacement town hall.
Okay, you've got that now.
I'm quoting here from the item. It's essential that this report aligns with the SPR. How can we possibly have allowed the demolition of the municipal buildings in the council HQ without knowing what's in the SPR? Possibly the most strategic building in the council's portfolio, and we are not as yet no firm plans for replacement. How can we allow that to happen?
Could I suggest that perhaps a briefing from officers for Councillor McCabe would maybe enable him to be brought up to speed with exactly where we are in relation to that?
Deputy Provost, I'm happy to accept that offer. All I'm pointing out here is that there's insufficient information coming for each and every elected member here. question I had, where is it being built? When is it being built? Do we have a design brief for the project? Who wrote the brief? These are questions. These are strategic questions we as councillors should be asking. And I don't see anything in any report coming across my desk which gives me sufficient confidence that we as a council are acting appropriately with our residents' money.
Okay, there will be a briefing and information will come as and when.
Can I just come in and say there was a decision made by council based on the information that was put in front of council in September last year, and that decision of the council has now been enacted. I would again suggest that it's maybe helpful if a briefing or to look at the past papers in relation to the council meetings and the information that was brought forward. But any member is at liberty to contact any of the officers around any of the previous decisions made by council and have the information given to them.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll move on then. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Item 5 is the review of taxi fares and other charges. Mr. Moody can introduce that.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. And this item, as members will see, Deputy Provost brings before Council a proposed change to the taxi fare scale and the charges within the taxi tariff. This wouldn't ordinarily come before the Council. It's normally an executive item, but there was a decision taken at the final executive of the last Council to accelerate the process for reviewing the taxi fare scales to avoid any delay over the election period. So that's why it's taken a slightly unusual course of an initial officer decision in consultation with group leaders and the portfolio holder on the fare scale to be advertised. That has duly been advertised. We have the comments and representations from that consultation process included within the report, and it now comes to Council for decision. In relation to the explanation as to why the executive decided to adopt that accelerated process, I think it's clear to all members that the price of fuel has risen quite significantly over the course of this year to levels which I think all accepted were putting significant pressure on the viability of the taxi trade and certainly increasing significantly the cost of operating and driving a taxi. So it was in that context that it was felt appropriate not to delay the matter till after the summer. The proposed changes to the fare scale and charges followed on from detailed discussion with the Taxi Forum, which has representation from drivers, from operators, and also from broader interests of users of taxis as well. And I think it's a carefully crafted set of proposals which seek to reflect the fact that there are increased costs for the trade, but not to increase fares to such an extent that it's likely to simply suppress the demand for the taxis themselves and have a negative effect on the operation of the trade. So the proposed changes are set out in Appendix 1 to your report. There is a change to the flag fall, that's the cost of hiring the taxi itself, and then a lesser percentage increase for the operation for each mile thereafter, so the so-called running mile. Appendix 2 of your report contains the responses to the consultation, and broadly those are positive in favour of the changes that have been advertised. That's the majority view of the consultees. In Appendix 3, you have a more detailed explanation of the matters taken into account in recommending these particular changes, and that formed the basis of the decision that was taken in consultation with group leaders to propose this particular fare scale to the public in the form of consultation. Turn now to the issue of the climate change implications, which are set out in 3.1 of the report. I think it's important, to emphasise the difference in the decision here to some others which the Council will take. In this context, the Council is acting as a regulator. We are not the direct provider of the service which is being discussed in this particular case, and the response to the fare changes proposed is largely going to be dependent on how consumers of taxi services respond to those particular changes. So it's not, in that context, I think, easy for the officers of the Council to be able to say one way or the other what the climate change impact will be. I think if we are able to say that it's to the extent that if there is an impact, it's likely to be to decrease the demand, particularly in shorter distance fares, and perhaps where there's discretionary choice in relation to that, to suppress some of the demand for that. So to that extent, if there is a climate change implication, it is likely to be in the positive. Beyond that, in relation to the equalities issue, there has been, I think, some difficulty over the years, in truly and meaningfully assessing that impact, and that is because, again, we're not the provider of the services which are regulated here. We can't collect the information on who is using the taxi services. We are not the ones providing the service which the members of public are using. So there isn't, I think, robust information to allow us to do that, and that's reflected in the comment on the equalities implications arising from the proposed change. Otherwise, Deputy Provost, I think the information is set out within the report. I'm happy to take questions, but otherwise the recommendation is set out at 2.1, and it's to ask you to agree the revised scale as advertised. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Gardner. Thank you, Deputy Provost, and it's good to hear our bins are getting collected right at the back of here. I'd also like to thank Mr Moody and Brian Douglas for bringing the report. I'd also like to mention the input from the previous spokesperson, Councillor Laura Mutter, who has worked diligently in bringing this forward. I'm sure the Taxi Forum members will miss her, but on the plus side for them, the meetings may be slightly shorter. I welcome this report coming forward, though none of us would wish to have to consider tariff increases during the cost of living crisis. We feel it is necessary to support the taxi trade. Everyone is well aware of the price increases affecting us all in our day-to-day living, especially fuel. Falkirk Council are doing all we can to assist our citizens, many of whom are facing difficult times, evidenced on Tuesday, where the Tackling Poverty in Falkirk report was agreed unanimously by the Executive Committee. The responses to the consultation on a proposed increase in taxi fares and scales showed a clear majority indicating support from within the trade. It is noted, however, that a minority of responses, including those from the public, have offered a different view, and some trade members have indicated that an increase in fares could prove to have an adverse effect on custom. The proposed increase, which was originally suggested by the Taxi Forum and therefore thereafter consulted upon, needs to be set in some form of context. The taxi trade have not had an increase in fares for 4 years, and in that period there has been the pandemic, where business was completely suppressed, and more recently the unprecedented rise in fuel costs and other associated costs, which we are all well aware of.
It's about balance, and the proposed increase of 50 pence in the flag fault and 5% in the running mile, along with a 20 pence increase in the engagement charge, I feel are reasonable and proportionate. Such an increase will not result in Falkirk being one of the most expensive local authority areas for taxi. It would have the effect of moving Falkirk from being one of the lowest more towards the mid-table out of the 32 local authorities. It's also worth noting that this is the maximum taxi tariff charge that can be levied on a customer. As outlined in the report, the Taxi Forum members themselves asked that this process be progressed with the highest priority due to the issues facing the trade, and having passed an emergency motion during the last executive, we now have the results of the mandatory consultation before us. Deputy Provost, it is important that this matter is agreed by members today and not subject to delay. I am therefore fully supportive of the suggested increase in the taxi fares and scales as advertised and consulted upon, and would move that the Council agree to the suggested changes as per Appendix 1. Thank you.
Councillor Murtagh.
I'm happy to second, and I see that Councillor Spears wants to say something, so I'm happy to reserve the right to come back in if he's got a comment he wanted to make first.
Councillor. Councillor Spears, do you want in?
Thank you, and thank you for using my name. It's appreciated. As we head into a summer of discontent, where we have trouble on the rail, we have trouble with local bus transport, there is real concern, especially in the outlying districts of Falkirk, regarding increases in taxi fares. Now, I totally understand that the increase in fuel, which is affecting everybody and must seriously be affecting the council as well, with the amount of vehicles and people that use their personal transport for work with the council. So I think there needs to be a lot more looked into this rather than just let's increase the taxi fares, because transport is going to be a real problem, especially if there's a summer of discontent and other groups decide to take strike action. And we need to look seriously at how our residents, constituents can get to their work, and can get to the doctor, can get to the hospital. So this problem isn't going to go away just by raising the taxi tariffs. There's a whole bigger problem out there, and that is something we need to seriously consider at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murtagh.
Yeah, thank you. And I thank Councillor Garner for his kind words, even the additional ones that he's given, although I would say that I always kept to time. He wouldn't say that if I was in the room, I think, but in recognition of his kind words, I'll be sure to warm the Taxi Forum up for you before the first meeting that you have the privilege of attending. I will certainly miss them. It's a trade that is quite difficult to get to grips with the complexities of, and I certainly enjoyed my time with Medina. As Colin was alluding to, though, as the regulatory body rather than the employer or the provider, it is a complex situation in that, you know, we discuss how all of our citizens and we ourselves are facing very difficult times in terms of the cost of living crisis. But while we see that, you know, and we've been very used to price increases on certain commodities, and particularly the increase which fuel it has had on many goods and services as companies are able to reflect that, taxi drivers do not have that opportunity. Their levels that they can charge are set solely by the council, and so they haven't been able to reflect what has been, I think we all recognise, a monumental increase and quite unprecedented increase in cost. And that was why it was so important that we did bring this forward without delay, and it was very much at the request of the trade, even prior to the situation which we've all come to know with the war in Ukraine and what was happening in the early spring in terms of the fuel prices. So we've done, I think, and officers have done a good job to bring this forward without delay. I do note within the responses also that you know, there are comments there from the public recognising that taxi drivers are our citizens too, and that they need to earn a fair living also. So This will keep us within the mid-table. You know, we're in the bottom third at the moment, but I think it's a right and fair proposal. Councillor Spears was picking up on some issues there, and I think we're all very aware of some of the wider issues around transport. And in the motion in which Councillor Garner was referring to at that executive, that was part of a wider paper that came from the PDP, and within the taxi PDP there were also proposals to look at demand responsive transport, to look at other ways wider of dealing with some of the issues that were mentioned. And I know the officers are taking that forward, and that will obviously come under Councillor Garner's portfolio. But I know that was part of the proposal that was put forward from the taxi PDP. So I think that there is other work going on around that. So I'm also happy to support the proposal. I think it's the right balance, and I think it's really important that we don't delay it, so that taxi drivers can have that surety, as it's still going to take some time before that comes in, and it will be at the end of August. So I think we need to give them that assurance now. Thanks, Davina. Thanks, Deputy Provost.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a motion by Councillor Garner, seconded by Councillor Murtagh. Councillor Hannah, do you have an amendment? Okay.
No amendment.
Councillor Kerr, do you have an amendment? Councillor Colley.
Sorry, I have a brief question. I think this is really challenging, balancing livelihoods versus cost of living. But I think, you know, taxi drivers are smallest of small businesses in terms of community wealth building. But that wasn't actually. I wanted to ask a question. I'm not expecting officers to have an answer today, but I just wondered if we could have some information. I'd noted the comments around, and it was actually supportive comments around somebody with a disability and talking about how vital the taxis were to them. And I just wondered if officers moving forward can provide some information on the number of taxi cards provided for those with disabilities, and what we do in terms of promoting awareness raising of that to make sure that those who are eligible for it are able to access it.
I think, as Councillor Colley anticipated, Deputy Provost, I don't have those figures here today, but I'm happy to obtain those and send them to her.
Okay. Councillor Deacon, do you want to know? Okay. All right. Well, we're at Councillor Kerr. Do you have an amendment? Oh, he's left. Okay. Councillor Spears, do you have an amendment?
No amendment.
Okay. Councillor Buchanan.
No amendment, Deputy Provost.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6, delegation of powers to determine urgent issues during the summer recess. Mr. Moody.
Yes, thank you again, Deputy Provost. This is a report which traditionally comes at this time of the year in advance of the summer recess, and it provides and delegates powers to your chief officers to take any necessary decisions in the absence of committees meeting in that period. The report sets out the scope of that delegation and the limitations on the delegation, and also the rotation of chief officers under. I don't know what the noun is for a large collection, but any suggestions would welcome. Thank you. Work so. Report sets out actions of the delegate.
Deputy Provost, I'm sorry, but I'm having problems trying to hear what's being said.
Councillor Nimmo, we're all having problems. I don't know what it is with Colin, but his microphones always seem to fail. It may well be, but perhaps I think he's maybe got a working one now.
Thank you. I'll try again. Is that better?
I can hear you fine now, Colin.
Thank you, Councillor Nimmo. So let bring back to say that the report sets out the scope of the delegation and consultation requirements, and you're asked to agree to delegate those powers to your Chief Officer during the summer recess. Thank you, Provost. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Nico John.
Happy to agree.
Okay, we're happy to agree.
Deputy Provost. Deputy Provost, sorry, I had a question there.
Yeah, Councillor Nimmo.
It's just in relation to the recommendations. The summer recess here is listed from the 23rd of June to the 23rd of August. Does that just tie in with the school holidays?
No, it's from today's meeting, Councillor Nimmo, as the final meeting of the Council to the first meeting of the Executive in August, which is the date noted. There is a typo, I have to say, because it does say from 23rd of June 2021. It is 2022 though, so yeah. But the explanation for the 23rd of August date is the first meeting of the Executive.
I did think we were getting an extra long recess period there, so book your holidays now.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll move on to item 7, membership of the committees and boards.
Thank you, Deputy Provost, and this is a brief report for information only. It just follows on from the statutory meeting and the allocation of seats among the independent members. It notes that agreement hasn't been reached on a number of the positions. Those are set out in the table at 3.2, where it's marked to be confirmed. My recommendation to Council is that we simply vote the position at this stage. I think the independent members should be offered some further opportunity to continue their discussions. If matters haven't been concluded in the coming months, there will be an opportunity to reconsider the issue again at September Council. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Councillor Buchanan.
Can you hear me okay, Deputy Provost? Yeah. Thank you very much. Now, obviously, I'm going to take some responsibility for this situation, because once again, I'll go back to the statutory meeting on the 25th of May, which obviously there was opportunities there, but the fact of the matter is, I had said originally on the issue about the remunerations, there were very little information that had came forward. There was never an opportunity to have any discussion with the other independent members. But what I did do was I had sent an email to Councillor Spears in relation to the issue about the executive. Unfortunately, I don't think that Councillor Spears had got that and never come back to me, because you've got to remember is that if you look at the table at the moment, Councillor Spears, who's one of the probably the most senior councillor over 30 years, the same as myself, he has no place on any committees at this stage, and that would be a travesty, not just for Councillor Spears, but it would also be a travesty for his citizens, for those who not just elected him, but everybody in his ward. I'm going to be magnanimous here, and I'm going to say quite clearly in public that my email to Councillor Spears had said quite clearly that if he wanted the executive, then I would be quite happy to give that up, because I had already, and once again I've got to thank all the members who supported me for the chairmanship of the planning. I would quite happy for Councillor Spears, especially with his commitment and his experience, to take on the executive. But it became a wee bit of a shambles at that particular time. But I would say at this stage that Councillor Spears, over 30 years service, and at the end of it, it needs to be, every councillor must be represented on a committee. Every councillor has a role to play. And I'm quite happy at this stage to say publicly, if Councillor Spears wants to at this stage, I'm quite happy to give up my place in the executive. and if Councillor Spears wants to take that position up. So that's my situation at the minute, because I think it's better being done openly and transparently, and just to let everybody know exactly what the position is, that people weren't trying to, well, in my case, and I'm sure Councillor Ritchie, and Councillor McCabe, we weren't trying to oust Councillor Spears out. Councillor Spears needs to be a member of this council, and being a full member of the council needs representation on committees. So if Councillor Spears wanted to say at this minute that because of his experience and so forth, that he would accept the executive position of the independents, because it only came down to myself and himself, I'd be quite happy to step aside and give him the position. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Billy. Councillor Spears, you don't have to make a decision on that at the moment. Would you like to make a decision, or would you prefer to wait?
Well, I must congratulate Councillor Buchanan on his magnanimous statement. Having served this council for some 34 years, and I believe I'm now the father of the council as the longest serving member, and have probably more background knowledge of the workings of Falkirk Council than most of our serving officers and councillors. I think it is to be accepted, the magnanimous statement by Councillor Buchanan. I'll certainly discuss this matter with my group and come back to the council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nico-John.
Can I just say that I think the committee positions was delegated to the independents. I think it's up to them to get together and agree positions, and recognising that people have pre-planned holidays, etc., and therefore there's not been the opportunities to do that. I would suggest that we do give them a bit of time, and in view of Councillor Buchanan's offer to step down from the executive, I think that the independent groups, or the independent members and the independent group, need to get together and discuss exactly who's going to take forward the positions, and there's an opportunity to do that before the next council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nimmo.
Just a point of clarification. The four independents are not a group. There is a non-aligned independent group, and then there's two independent. Just a point of clarification for the leader.
Can I just say I did correct myself, Councillor Spears, on that, and I do apologise. I did say it about the independent members and the independent group.
Okay, Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks very much, Deputy Provost. I wonder if we could just get some legal clarification from Colin regarding our standing orders, regarding what's actually just been proposed.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I think referring to the offer which had come from Councillor Buchanan, who was appointed to the executive by the council at the statutory meeting. I think what Councillor Buchanan is saying, that he would offer to stand down from that position, it would accordingly become a vacancy. There would be a question then to decide between non-aligned independent group and the two independent members who would take up that position. And I think what the leader has noted is that the opportunity following to take place. Councillor Spears has indicated he will give consideration to that position, and we'll discuss it with his colleague Councillor McCabe. So I think there are an indication to Council that there are discussions forthcoming. Councillor Nico-John is correct in indicating for the four members, the two group are not in the group, to determine this among themselves. So I think that's what we would anticipate taking place in the forthcoming weeks. And if agreement is reached, then the independent members will take up the places which are still to be confirmed. If that isn't able to be achieved, the matter will be reported back to Council in September, and it may be that Council will then need to take that decision.
Thanks for that, Colin.
Thank you. Councillor Garner.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody otherwise minded? I'm happy to agree. Thank you.
Agreed.
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 Move on to item 8, execution of deeds.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. And this is a report for information only. It draws to the Council's attention the formal deeds which have been executed on behalf of the Council. Those are set out in the appendix to the report and they're for noting only. Thank you.
Okay, everybody happy to note?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Okay, that closes the meeting. Have a good holiday.
Congratulations to the Deputy Provost for
Thank
his
you.
first meeting.
Thanks to the chair.